Hello, welcome to Armchair Politics. So, at this point, you may be wondering why I'm lying in a giant pile of Legos. That seems like the opposite of what anyone would ever want to do with Legos. The answer to that very normal question is because they're mine. Because they're mine, I should have the right to do whatever I want with them, whether that's laying in them for some reason or diving into them like Scrooge McDuck.
It's not a liquid! It's a great many pieces of solid matter that form a hard floor-like surface!
I think that the right to own your things and do whatever you want with them is important. So, if I think the right to own things is important, why would I want to support socialism if, as I've heard over and over again, socialists want to abolish private property? Well, do I have the answer for you, and hopefully it'll be less painful for you than it currently is for me. So in this first season of the show, every episode is sought to cover a certain theme, with the first one being that getting to work is often very stressful and work within itself. The second one talked about how you don't own any of the time in your life. Why is housing so expensive? Covered the opportunity to own your shelter is going away. And finally, this one covered how everything in your life is turning into a rental. If you haven't watched those, it's fine. This video does stand on its own, but I encourage you to give them a watch. They contribute to my point here, and they took a lot of work to make. Everyone seems to be owning less and less of their lives. This fact is universally regarded as true, and everyone seems to have a solution. Most of them come from TikTok, and most of them make no sense. What we're going to look at today is socialism. And more specifically, we're going to look at a very common misunderstanding the public has. This stuff that I'm laying in isn't my private property, it's my personal property. Private and personal property are two different concepts with two different definitions, yet they're used interchangeably by most people. This distinction can get pretty convoluted, but here's an easy way to understand it. Imagine if you were to come to my house and you saw something that you wanted. It would probably be this stupid little yellow guy. You represent my financial responsibility. If you tried to take it, I would shout, "Hey, that's my personal property." But if the next day I sold all of this to some random store and then you tried to take it from them, a worker there would tell you, "You can't take that, it's the company's private property." That's pretty weird, right? How did all of this personal property become private property? Well, it's all about what it's used for. The terms for the different uses are use value and exchange value. This little yellow guy has use value to me. I squeeze it, it throws up, then I regret my purchase. Get back in there. Oh my god, it worked the first time. That's the first time it's ever worked. However, to the dropshipper that sold him, all he has is exchange value. The home that you live in keeps you warm, gives you privacy, gives you the space to hang out with friends, binge TV, and watch armchair politics. So it has use value to you. However, to the developer that built it, or your landlord, all it has is exchange value. They only care about how much they can sell it to you for. That might not seem so bad at first. More use value has got to equal more exchange value, right? Well, yes and no. Let's take insulin as an example. Insulin is a life-saving drug to a lot of people, so its use value is incredibly high, but it's very cheap to make. It costs drug companies about $2.28 to make a single vial, according to the National Library of Medicine. Even less if you consider how much drug companies get subsidized by the government. So it has a super low exchange value despite being so important. That's a pretty big opportunity for an aspiring company. This product has a sky-high use value and a very low exchange value. So in order to take advantage of that sweet inelastic demand, they will artificially raise the price of insulin, no matter how many people die in the process. Oh, but wait, there's more. If you haven't questioned my sanity at all, this has got to do it. Not all objects have objective exchange value at all. The air that I'm breathing is, for lack of a better word, worthless. But as O'Hare from the Lorax discovered, and this very real company, air has a high use value but zero exchange value, so companies will find a way to artificially inflate exchange value. Of course, neither example here can actually force you to buy air because it's all around us, but they can artificially inflate the value of something else that's also all around us and me. Water. Corporations will routinely sell water to you, even though humans need it to survive, and it's everywhere. Water bottle companies tap into public reservoirs in order to fill up their bottles, and that's caused a lot of problems for cities and their water levels in the past. Water bottles also make up a huge chunk of pollution in, ironically, our waters. So this is a situation where something that has a high use value but no exchange value is then manipulated to have exchange value in a way that only benefits the wealthy. Most people laugh at the whole O'Hare thing in the Lorax because they're like, wow, buying bottled air is stupid. But I want you to ask yourself, is buying water all that different? I hope you're picking up what I'm putting down because it can get pretty complicated and there are a lot of asterisks. Use value describes how valuable an object is based on its use. Exchange value describes how valuable an object is based on how much it can be exchanged for. That brings us back to personal and private property. Luckily, this part is a lot more clear. Personal property is property that has use value to you, and private property is property that has exchange value to you. Luckily for my sanity, it's pretty much a one-to-one connection.
This isn't a high-budget production, so I can't afford to have myself magically dried off for the next scene. It's true that socialists want to abolish private property, like rental homes, stock, and anything that's purely for exchange value. But this towel is pretty useful to me right now, and it's safe in a hypothetical socialist world. Socialists just want towels and pretty much anything else that's useful to a person to be available to anyone who needs it. That brings us all the way back to our granddaddy capitalism. It's true that capitalism produced many of the things that I love today. This towel was made by some company who was operating for a profit. But just because this towel and every other product we love was produced by capitalism, doesn't mean it can't be produced by another organization of the economy. Under capitalism, an object is produced with its exchange value the priority. This usually means short-term benefit. Your phone's lifespan isn't super short because that feature is useful to you. Its lifespan is short because it's more profitable to make you buy a new phone year after year than it is to make it last longer. Under socialism, an object is produced with its use value being the priority. A phone produced in a hypothetical socialist country would last a lot longer. It would also have no incentive to keep pushing absolutely useless microtransactions, Apple. Let's sum up what we've learned so far. Use value is the measurement of how useful an object is to a person, whereas exchange value is how valuable an object is based on how much it can be exchanged for. Private property is property with exchange value. Personal property is property with use value. Why should you or I care about the distinction between private and personal property? It's just semantics. Those concerns are valid and semantics are annoying, but in politics, language does sometimes matter. The truth is that people really like their stuff. We like to pretend otherwise, but we're all a bunch of bumbling idiots who run around hoarding an infinite selection of Oreos and other knickknacks like a bunch of patriotic golems. Our love of stuff is one thing that brings us all together. So like a bunch of monkeys, when we hear that one side wants to take our stuff away, whether it's Oreos or an arsenal that could flatten a small nation, they feel pretty threatened, and that's enough to completely turn them away. Educating people about the political systems they live under, at least enough to tell when someone is lying to them, is pretty important for a functional democracy. Contrary to what Gary Vee wants you to think,
that was bad.
Your ownership of your life doesn't come down to your personal decisions. It's getting harder to go to work, to own a home, to own your time. Problems like that don't come down to a personal level. No amount of individual hustle culture can bring about the change that we need. It's not that this generation is stupid or financially irresponsible. It's that the most recent generations today aren't given the same opportunities as the ones before it. That shift in opportunity just so happens to correspond with the rise of neoliberal capitalism around the world. I hate to say it, but even if everyone sorted their recycling and ride-shared to work every day, oil companies would still blow endless amounts of fumes into the sky. Silicon Valley corporations would still lay off huge swaths of their workforce, and the planet wouldn't be that much better off. Your personal decisions would matter in a vacuum, but we don't live in a vacuum. We live in a world full of billions of people who all have different motivations, dreams, and interests. Some people like guns, some people like diving into a pile of Legos like Scrooge McDuck. My point here is that change is going to have to happen on a societal level, which is admittedly a lot harder than change on a personal level. But don't lose hope, it can be done. Union organizing is happening all over the country. Historically, unions are the best way to change labor conditions in a society. So if you feel like your boss is exploiting you, unionize your workplace. It's a hard thing to do, but the return will be worth it. I also encourage you to get involved in local politics. You have a lot of power on a local level. And currently, the only people who show up to local meetings are these people.
I feel like she did a really good job finding excuses to defend the things she put on. None of us are that stupid.
Parents alleged the video game character is actually a depiction of Satan and that the hand symbol is demonic, with several even using the word witchcraft to describe it.
So your local government would probably love to have you there. Make sure to tune in for next season where I'm going to be covering American politicians on both sides and the embarrassing things they've done. I got to admit, that's very low effort content, so stay tuned for that. I post every Monday at 8 a.m. If you have any feedback for me, make sure to leave it in the comments. I'd love to hear from you. Have a nice day.